I'm Andrea Johnson. I'm the Grant and Financial Education Coordinator for the Office of Consumer Credit Commissioner. Today, we're going to go over fitness and what that means for you starting off this new year. I want to point out that this webinar is for informational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. So a little background on the Texas Office of Consumer Credit Commissioner. We license and regulate certain non-depository institutions like pawn shops, payday loan lenders, and registered creditors. We protect and safeguard consumers like yourself against abusive and deceptive practices. And we educate consumers and creditors about your rights and responsibilities. If you have any concerns or complaints that you feel need to be addressed by any of the industries that we license or regulate, please contact our Consumer Assistance Helpline. They are also available if you just need someone to talk over contract terms with you, if there's something you don't understand before you sign on the dotted line. We provide financial education through myself, Financial Education Coordinator, informational seminars and webinars like this one, financial education materials like the handouts that I've provided today. You can actually get some of those on occc.texas.gov. We provide public service announcements and press releases, and we partner with other education-oriented organizations. Now, I always like to say a little bit about the Texas Financial Education Endowment here, being the grant coordinator. What this means is our agency gives grant funds to organizations across the state of Texas on a 2-year cycle that they deliver financial education programs at low or no cost in the areas that they're in. And those programs are K through 12, adult financial education, and financial coaching. So that's something we're really proud of. And, you know, if you know of any nonprofit organizations throughout the state that might be something that they could benefit from, our next grant cycle starts in 2022. So I would definitely be looking forward to helping them. So financial fitness in the new year. The top 10 New Year's resolutions: exercise more, lose weight, get organized, learn a new skill or hobby, live life to the fullest, and right there in the middle, save more, spend less. We are not alone in the sense that money is important, being financially fit is important, and knowing where your finances are, because it helps with a whole list of other issues you might be having. So when it comes to your New Year's resolutions and being financially fit and making a goal for that, they're pretty much the same. You want to prepare, you want to set goals, you want to make those manageable goals, and you want to communicate them with the people in your life, you know. And we're going to talk about all of these different things and how it relates to your financial fitness. And the big takeaway is don't be too hard on yourself. So if you are saving money for a new house or a new car or just to have a rainy day fund, and something comes up, don't be too hard on yourself when you have to take a little from that fund and put it towards something else. Life happens, right? So also in the chat box today, I want to know, do you have any New Year's resolutions this year? And what are they? So if you do have New Year's resolutions, sorry, I got a stray hair going on. If you do have any New Year's resolutions, go ahead and share those in the chat box. Myself, personally, you know, finances are always there, close to the top of the list, but it's also weight, because I did, you know, gain the quarantine 15, I guess you could say. And it looks like stop buying so much on Amazon. I can agree with that. I saw several memes that said I haven't purchased anything on Amazon this year on New Year's Day, and sadly enough, I could not post that. Pretty much what is on the list. So the list that had the 10 resolutions, yep. Paying off debt, saving money, And what's the, oh, this one looks, this plan is already looking out, well thought out. Save 25% of my take-home pay, increase my 401 contributions by 2%. I would say you are already making something, it sounds like you're definitely preparing for this New Year's resolution. This was not one that you were thinking of lightly. So when it comes to being financially fit, think about the fact that financial stress and all those New Year's resolutions you just saw, financial stress plays a big role in your health. It can lead to poor physical health, delayed health care, unhealthy coping habits, and it puts a strain on relationships. So your financial health, even if finances aren't part of your New Year's resolutions or it's not on your outlook right now, it plays a big role in your overall health. Oh, someone else I just would like to share said, review previous year's monthly budget to adjust for a new year. I think that's a good one. So we're talking about adjustments, aren't we? We're talking about changes. We're talking about ways to cope and deal with financial stress. So you deal with financial stress by understanding your cycle of debt, creating sources of income, working on a budget, like someone else just pointed out, and practicing stress relieving techniques. Now, I'm not a licensed therapist, so we're not going to go over a lot of stress relieving techniques, but I can tell you that focusing on one financial problem at a time is going to be the most beneficial to making a clear financial picture. So why does financial health matter, and why should it matter to you? Well, financial health can help heal your credit, which can lead to better consumer confidence, which I love having consumer confidence when I go out. It sets a budget to help you set realistic goals. It gives you goals so that your financial outlook is better, and it helps you build for the future for things that you like or want to do, like retire. So I've got some questions today in the polling box. And it's just kind of keep us, engaged, see what's going on. So what aspects of your life are affected by poor financial health? Go ahead and, click on what you think best fits you. Is it physical? Is it mental? Is it emotional? Is it your relationships? Do you find yourself constantly fighting with your spouse or your partner about how much they're spending, what they're spending money on? When it comes to physical, are you putting doctor's appointments because you don't want to make the copay? I had a friend of mine over the holidays said a man had come into the doctor's office when she was waiting and he needed to be treated in order to go back to work. But his copay, he didn't have it. And so they were ready to turn him away. And she stood up and paid for his copay so that he could go back to work because financially he could not take care of his physical health at that moment. So let's see how everyone is doing today. It looks like 56% of you say mental, 33% say emotional, and 11% of you say that it affects you and your relationships, which is totally understandable. So in addition to our financial health, why is it important to have good credit and why do you need it? Real quick, someone said that polling question needs another tab. I'd be curious to know what you would like me to add because I can add it to my next presentation. So anyway, why is it important to have a good credit and why do you need it? Credit gives you the financial power to qualify to borrow money or pay for goods and services over time. It means you can be trusted to borrow money now because you will pay it back later. So that's why you need to have good credit. It also helps you get the things you want. And those things even include getting a job, renting an apartment, financing a car, getting a loan, spreading out payments, phone service, credit cards, qualifying for insurance. All of these things, if you have good credit, you can have lower rates. You can spread out payments longer. You can get the better phone deal when you want the new grade because you've got better credit. So how do lenders determine your credit worthiness? Creditors are looking at the 3 C's: character, capacity, and capital. Your character is how well you've handled your past debt obligations. You know, are you good at paying them on time? Do you have good history? Do you have delinquent bills? What do you have that could be holding you back? Capacity. How much debt can a borrower comfortably handle? You know, they're going to be looking at your debt to income ratio. They're going to look at what you have coming in, the debt you already have, and if that fits into that little box to make sure that they're not going to get dirt when your payments aren't being made. Capital. They're looking at current available assets, such as if you own a home or you have savings or investments used to repay the debt if you are not able to. That's also where cosigners come in. So good credit versus bad credit. To a lender, good credit means that you're reliable in paying your bills on time, that companies are more willing to extend credit to you, and they might be offering you lower pricing. Now, bad credit, whether any of these things are true, a lender might see you having bad credit because you're unreliable in paying your bills on time, you have a high debt to credit ratio, your bills are paid late, your debts are abandoned, or you've even filed for bankruptcy. So when we're talking about credit, there's also your credit score. And of course, the higher your credit score, the better. I personally compete with my husband all the time, he's not aware of this, to make sure that my credit score is higher than his, even if it's my own personal decision. But it's important that the longer your credit history is, better. So in this instance, if you have no credit history whatsoever, and you look at your credit report and your credit score and you go, I don't understand, I have bad credit. Well, it's because you have no history. So you've got to, it's kind of a double-edged sword. You've got to have history in order to have credit, in order to build credit and have good credit. What is your debt to income ratio? So the lower, the better. Let's say you have a credit card with a $8,000 limit on it and you've charged up $9,500. You're pretty close to maxing that card out. And that doesn't look good to a lender, because how are you going to be able to keep paying it off and take on whatever debt you're trying to get from another lender? How many inquiries do you have? The less, the better. Inquiries stay on your credit report for 2 years. And when creditors see you just clicking right along and applying for all these credit cards and getting all these credit cards, they don't understand. They look at someone who's, you know, maybe you're just spending money like water. So that may not be in their best interest. Do you pay your bills on time? You know, a late payment here or there is one thing, but if you've let a bill go delinquent and it's just sitting against your credit, that's going to look pretty bad when you go to, you're going to have to pay, you know, a deposit for every utility you want to turn on. Some places will, you know, let you pass a deposit for your water or your gas or your electric if they look at your previous bill and see that you have good standing. Are there any charged off accounts, judgments, or bankruptcies on your credit file? That's something else they're looking at. Credit scores typically range from 350 to 850, and the higher the score, the easier it will be to qualify for the best credit terms. I personally like to have a really high credit score. Excellent, I believe excellent is 750 or higher. So I like to be in that 750 or higher. And like everyone, mine has taken, you know, it fluctuates. No one's perfect. My credit has gone up and down throughout my entire adult life. It's never been and stayed perfect. So don't let that, you know, set you back or make you feel discouraged in any way. And there are 3 credit reporting bureaus. They do not make credit lending decisions. They maintain and compile credit information in a credit report. Your job is to establish your credit, check your report for any inaccuracies, and dispute those inaccuracies with the creditor and the credit bureau. And just so you know, you are entitled to one free credit report every year, and you can get that through annualcreditreport.com. This last year with the pandemic, that was they were letting people get their credit reports more frequently because of the pandemic and things that were going on, and all the scams and fraud and all those things that were happening because of the pandemic. You were able to get your credit report more frequently for free. I believe it was once a week or once a month. I can't remember. So what's in a credit report? Credit report will have your personal identifying information. So that includes your current name, any former names you've had. That includes your current address, your previous addresses, your current employer, your previous employers, and their information as well. Where, when, and how long you were there. Account information. It's going to include how many accounts you have open, the balances, and whether or not you're in good standing. It's going to have public record information such as tax liens, liens, any liens, judgments, or bankruptcies. And it's going to have your inquiries. And like I said, those last up to 2 years. What you're not going to find in a credit report is your race, religion, medical history, political preference, or your criminal record. You're not going to see that in a credit report. People are not making decisions. When they look at your credit report, they're not basing those decisions on your personal identifiable things. They're making those on your very basic identification information. So name, address, all of that stuff, and making sure that stuff is accurate. So types of credit inquiries, hard and soft. A hard inquiry is when a lender reviews your credit report to make a decision. And that could be like mortgage, auto, credit cards. They're considered hard because they are tied to an actual credit application. This does and can affect your credit score. When you check your credit, that's why you should be checking your credit. When you check your credit, or when a lender checks for pre-approval, this is a soft inquiry, and this does not affect your credit score. So people have asked before, if I check my credit, does that affect my credit score? And the answer is no, it doesn't. That's why you need to be checking it, because what's affecting your credit score is not checking it, and there's fraud against you that you need to dispute and get rid of. So the difference between a hard and a soft inquiry, the big difference is one is connected to an application and one is connected to pre-approval. So you're getting all those pre-approval letters in the mail, and you're like, oh, why am I getting all these, credit card offers right now? As long as you're not filling out those applications and sending them back, it's not affecting your credit. Now, once you fill out that application and send it back to the creditor, now there's been a ding on your credit. Managing credit inquiries. The fewer the inquiries, the better. Here, less is more. The less you have, the more points you will have on your credit score. Only apply for credit when you need it. I know I see a lot of those offers, especially with the holidays that just passed. There were tons of credit cards that were like, 12 months no interest, $40 off, 20% off. If you apply for our credit card, you get that today on this purchase. And I have done this a little past, and I'm learning the error of my ways and not doing this so frequently anymore. So it happens to everyone. When you're applying for a mortgage or a loan, you need to do your shopping in a short time frame. Also, regularly check your credit report. That's a big one. Should you place a fraud alert or a freeze on your credit report, and what are the differences? So a freeze generally stops all access to your credit report. It's available to anyone, and it's temporary until you remove it. A fraud alert, a business must verify your identity before issuing credit. It remains in effect for 90 days. Now, to place a fraud or freeze alert on your credit, you must contact at least one of the 3 major credit reporting agencies by phone or online. And I like to mention this one because recently I talked to a woman. She and her husband had been getting a ton of actual credit cards in the mail, not offers, but credit cards, and neither one of them had applied for it. Well, they checked their credit, and it turned out, of course, somebody was fraudulently applying for credit cards in their name. What they did was they put a freeze on their credit, and they've left it on there ever since this has been going on. They just left it on there. They've never taken it off unless they need to. And what she said is that when it comes time and she sees something she really wants and she thinks it's worth it to apply for the credit and get whatever that is, she has to really think about it because there's this other stopgap between her applying for the card and making the purchase and her credit. So she would have to contact them and say, hey, I want the freeze taken off in order to apply for whatever credit she's trying to get. And so it kind of gives her a hey, stop kind of thing, and makes her really think about her credit decisions. So it might be good for some people to do that as well. How do you dispute inaccuracies? If you discover any inaccuracies in your credit report, complete the request for a reinvestigation form the credit reporting agency sent you. So they will send you something, or you send a letter listing each incorrect item and explain exactly what is wrong. If it's not resolved, you can add a statement to your file of 100 words or less, and you need to contact the creditor. And here's what the dispute process looks like. So first you notice there's a discrepancy in your credit file. And then you dispute it with the credit bureau. The credit bureau will check with the creditor to verify the information. The creditor has 30 days. This is not an overnight process. 30 days to investigate and respond to the bureau. If the creditor doesn't respond, the information must be removed. If the creditor does respond, the item will either be deleted or verified. A new copy of the credit report is then sent to you. You are entitled to a statement of no more than 100 words to explain the negative remarks. So I always like to point out that this is not an overnight process. It's kind of like when you purchase at a store and you need to make a return. So when you make the purchase, the money comes out of your account. Like when you make the return, who knows when that money is going to come? Hopefully sooner rather than later. But I mean, it could take weeks for some businesses to turn that around, banking institutions to turn that money around. And so just like that, this is not an overnight process. You can't find something on your credit report and go, oh, take it off now and it be done. It can take 30 days or longer, depending on the back and forth, of course. Also, when it comes to talking about credit, you want to talk about reestablishing credit. And one of the ways to reestablish credit is to prove that you are stable. You have maintained the same kind of employment, you make your payments on time, and you've lived in the same household for a length of time. And I found out this when I bought my first home. It wasn't the fact of how long I had been working in my current place. They also looked at the fact that it was consistently the same type of employment, because I was a news producer at the time. So I had a contract here, a contract here, and a contract here. And as those terms would come up, I would switch stations. So it wasn't how long I was at that news station, but my length of employment in the same type of field also looked at. It takes patience to establish your credit. This is not an overnight process. When you find a discrepancy, approach things slow and steady. Handle one thing at a time. Don't just keep going back and forth trying to go, okay, well, there's 5 things on here that are wrong. I have to tag on all of them at once. Okay, that's not going to help your financial stress, so don't do that. You can apply for a secured account, such as a loan or a credit card secured by a small savings account. And that's also a good one for people who are establishing credit. You got a teenager in the house who's moving out for the first time. Maybe a secured loan or credit card will help them build their credit. And it's not just, they go out into the real world for the first time and everyone throws a credit card application at them. You also want to consider the pros and cons of debt settlement. I know I've seen a ton of commercials about debt settlement offers now because it's the new year. This is on people's minds. And what you want to consider is the fact that one pro of debt settlement is that it may help you pay off your debt for much less than what you owe. Okay, that's good. But on the other side of that, it will impact your credit and it could be there for a while. So, think of I always think of bankruptcies in the sense there's 7-year and 10-year bankruptcies, and those will be on your credit report for 7 or 10 years depending on how you file. So that's the thing about your credit and any delinquencies that you might have on there, judgments, liens, bankruptcies. They're going to be on there for a while, and debt settlement offers are the same. They will be on there for a little while. How often, since we just talked about it, how often do you check your credit report? You guys answer that. I'm gonna get a sip of my trusty water over here. So, everyone's answering, and we've got some nevers today. So this is how everyone is stacking up today. 43% of you say you're checking it at least once a year, and that's great because that's what you need to be doing at least. 5% say it's a year or more. 33% say more than twice a year, and 19%. So of those that say never, we need to get you checking your credit report at least once a year. It'll help to keep track of things and see where you're going. Someone says, is it worth to pay for a credit monitoring identity theft service? I don't know about whether or not I want to say it's worth it or not. It kind of would depend on your situation. I haven't had to deal with identity theft. When it comes to credit monitoring, I use, Credit Karma free side of things just to kind of check in occasionally, make sure there's nothing on there that shouldn't be on there, but I don't pay for anything to monitor it. But like I said, it depends on your situation. I know someone who's had identity thefts 3 times, so it could be advantageous for them to use a monitoring service that you have to pay for, that gives you alerts, that's tracking these things and helping you out, because you do get just a little bit more bells and whistles when you're paying for stuff as just a free service that you are basically monitoring yourself. Someone said that some credit cards offer service with monthly alters, monthly fees. No, free service with monthly alters. So there are, like they mentioned, there are some credit card companies out there that do offer free credit monitoring services. I've seen those advertised pretty frequently. So that could be something worth looking into as well. What's interesting with that, when a credit service is offering free credit monitoring, it's kind of benefiting them in the same way, because if you're getting your credit monitored and you have a credit card with them, or you have an account with them or a bank account with them, then if something happens, if something pops up, they know who's going to be on the hook for it. And the company doesn't want to be on the hook for it, right? So it's good to know it's good for everyone involved if you're keeping track of those things. Is one option is, you know, free credit monitoring services, or like credit cards, and there's a couple banks that do it as well. I can't think of the name. I see some commercials running through my head right now about it, and I cannot think of who specifically does it. Oh, alerts like Discover. Yes, Discover does. Those are the commercials I'm seeing in my head right now. That Discover does offer free credit monitoring. So yes, there are several out there that will help you. Today we're talking about financial fitness. We're going to talk about budgeting strategies. And if you have any budget strategies that you like, that you would like to recommend, this is one a lot of people bring up. Dave, for instance, a lot of people have used his different techniques for budgeting and making, you know, setting goals and things like that to keep them stay on track. So if you have any suggestions, please let me know and I will share them with everyone today. Okay? So we're going to go over a few today. There's budgeting percentages, there's the 50-20-30, the 80-20, and the zero-based budgeting. And I kind of fall between, I'm more of a zero-based budgeting person because I need to know where every single dollar is going. Someone today says they use the Every Dollar app. I've heard of that one. That's a good one. And it sounds like since it's called a dollar, that might go in line with the zero-based budgeting. So to the 50-30-20 technique, this splits your take-home pay into 3 categories: 50% for your needs, 30% for your wants, and 20% for savings and debt repayment. The 80-20 is 20% for savings and debt and 80% for everything else. Zero-based budgeting is that you take your the balance of your income and your expenses. Every dollar has a purpose, and the same idea, it's the same idea as the envelope method, you know, where you would take different envelopes and put cash into every single one, and that gets dispersed among, you know, the different bills that you have, and whatever you have left over is what you have in your pocket. So when it comes to zero-based budgeting, you're going to take your income and subtract your expenses all the way down to 0. And that's kind of what I do. I need to know where everything is going and how much is going where. Now, creating a budget. One thing about creating a budget is that it takes time and it's not something you should just dive right into. But everyone is different, and here are some general guidelines when it comes to percentages on what you should be spending in these different categories. Housing, of course, is the highest, 25 to 30%. If you live in Austin, it could be higher than that, unfortunately. Transportation, 10 to 15%. Utilities, 5 to 10%. Insurance, 10 to 15%. Food, 10 to 15%. And then on the other side, I've got, you know, all of the things are kind of more the fun side of things. So your entertainment, your miscellaneous, your personal spending, savings and giving, those are going to all be between 5 and 10%. But these numbers are based on your total after-tax income, but before 401k, medical insurance, or other contributions. Here is an example of what zero-based budgeting using percentages could look like for you. And you'll notice on this one, there's also a student loan, and that says 3%. But then entertainment, personal spending, and miscellaneous spending have all kind of been knocked down. Instead of doing the 5 to 10%, you gotta find those other categories that you can spend less in order to pay for the things you need. The student loan is a need to pay for item. New boots, new sweater, just because they're cute, is not necessarily a need to pay for item. And I say that from personal experience. I'm not trying to call anyone out today because, you know, sometimes a cute sweater, a new pair, it's great. So budget categories. Housing. This is your rent or your mortgage and includes things like your property taxes and your homeowners or renters insurance. Not just your mortgage or your rent, but these other items that go along with it. Transportation. This includes your car maintenance, your gasoline, public transportation expenses, and parking. For me, this is also going to include my new driver's license fee, utilities, electricity, water, natural gas, trash, and everyone needs a cell phone nowadays. Insurance, health insurance, life insurance, car insurance. You see that car insurance is not transportation, but it has its own category being an insurance. Food. This is not just what you're spending on groceries. This is what you're spending on eating out. I should really make a better budget for this personally. I have a tendency on the weekend, especially, I don't want to cook. I have 2 small children. My husband doesn't want to cook, and we're just, so we have a tendency to eat out. And as the kids are getting bigger, this is getting more expensive. Entertainment. Fun things like Netflix, maybe movies, or when we can go bowling. I also would include in that probably Disney Plus. Any of those online streaming accounts that you have, you know, those are things you need to look at as entertainment. Miscellaneous is going to cover extra funds for all the things that will come up during the month, because things will come up. We have some aging pets in our home, and 2020 was really hard for us with our pets. And so a lot of the money that we had set aside, you know, as miscellaneous savings, had to go towards their health care. Personal spending, haircuts, clothing, maybe a run to Target. And make sure you're paying yourself first. And it's interesting that you say when you're doing savings and you're saving money to pay yourself first. You don't take half your paycheck and put it in a savings account. Of course, you make your budget and you set aside that amount in your budget to go automatically into savings. So you're going to start putting money away for yourself. And then there's giving. Do you have any charitable causes that you care about? If so, they need to go into your budget. You know, I get calls all the time from different organizations wanting donations. And if there's one that I really want to work with, I will put them as my budget and try to include them on a regular basis. How do you know how much to put in each category? Well, you're going to review your receipts. That includes your credit card and bank statements, and to see what you spend in these categories on a regular basis. So you're not going to sit down today and knock out a budget. In January, we've only been in the new year for 7 days. Probably, if you want to start soon, look at what you did in December and make sure nothing has changed, like you didn't get a big promotion with a big raise, or your spouse or partner didn't get a big promotion, a big raise. Because, you know, you got to look at what you actually have coming in. Or did someone lose their job, for instance? You know, maybe the new year started with job loss. So you want to track what you're doing first and then budget, instead of trying to just dive right in and go, oh, I see my bank statement, let me do this. You know, give yourself time to figure things out. So that way you'll be better prepared and you'll be able to manage your goal, and you will make that goal achievable. So if your after-tax pay isn't enough to cover all of your expenses, then you need to adjust the categories that we've been talking about. When income increases, don't increase your spending, stick to the same budget. And you want to pay off debt and save the extra money when you can. So if more money is coming in, I would say that if you're going to get a promotion, if you get a raise, set up a bank account that you don't have easy access to. You know, a totally separate. I always say I have a working account and I have my savings account. And the working account is the one you pay the bills out of. You do the grocery shopping, you do all this other stuff, and then I have a separate account, not even attached, not at the same institution. And that's where I put my extras, you know. So direct deposit to that account. So every time you get paid, $20 goes into that account, or whatever your raise is. So if you make $50 extra a month, pull that into your savings account, because if you never saw it, then you'll miss it, right? If you didn't start using it in your every monthly bill payment process, You're not going to miss the money when it's not there. It's just going to be the same old thing. So debt repayment, debt snowball. This is paying the minimum payment on everything, and any extra goes to the smallest balance. I personally lean towards this one because when you pay off that small balance, you're going to see more of an immediate result. You know, if you're plugging away at something that's got a high balance, it's going to be harder to and take longer to pay that off and pay that down, right? So when you do the debt snowball, when it comes to building your budget, working on your credit, you're paying the minimum payment on everything, regardless of the interest rate, and paying any extra towards the smallest balance. Now, the other side of that is the debt avalanche. Now, what you do here is you make the minimum payment on everything, and then whatever has the highest interest rate is what you're going to pay off faster. That's what you're going to plug more funds into. That's what, if you pay off one debt, you're going to start chunking away at this one. Now, the idea here is that that higher interest rate and that higher balance, possibly the higher balance, that higher interest rate is causing you higher interest charges every month. So if you're not paying it down and paying it off faster, you're going to just keep getting hit with those higher charges because of that higher interest rate. You can also think about consolidating your credit cards. Consider balance transfers, but watch out for fees. You know, if they say 0% for 12 months and you've consolidated all your credit cards, but at the end of that 12 months, you still have a high balance that you can't pay off, you will find yourself in the exact same place that you were before, because after those 12 months, your interest rate is not going to be zero, and it could be quite higher than what you were expecting. If you haven't already, you should stop using credit cards or other debt to finance living expenses. And this will get into like cyclical debt. So you are coming to the end of your month, or it's right before your paycheck, your payday, and you go, oh, and you have a bill that was due, or you want to go out to eat with your friends, or there's something you want and you want the credit card and swipe or type it in online. Try doing that. Try to figure out what those expenses are and how to cut them out of your life and get the credit card paid off. Try using extra money to pay off your debt. So like I said, if you get a raise or if you have a side job, then you know, use that money towards paying off your debt. And this one you might go, ha, 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 ask for lower interest rates. Well, here's the thing. It hurts to ask. So if you have high interest rates and you are paying your bills on time, but you're just struggling because, you know, that interest rate is too high, call and ask. You know, personally, I don't have a good story for this one, because I did call and ask one time, and they told me, you know, hey, you pay your bill on time and you have great credits, nothing we can do for you. And it was kind of like a what moment, you know? But to say that hasn't always been the case in other instances where, you know, it comes to loans and things of that nature. And my husband has had, you know, a pretty good rate with this too. You know, when he was trying to build up his credit and move forward, this was something that he was able to do. So when it comes to credit and budgeting, you need to look also for increasing your income if you need to, and if you can. You know, some of us, just the 9 to 5, 40 hours a week is enough for our mental and emotional well-being. But if your debt is really high, and there's some other things, you know, besides looking for a second job that are this list that we can talk about right now. And if you have any suggestions, please share those with me in the chat box and I'll pass those along. So one of the things you can do to increase your income is your paycheck for deductions. Do you have any optional deductions you could eliminate, and are your tax withholdings appropriate? So this means, what are you having taken out for taxes? Are you doing extra withholdings So look at that, make sure it's on track, and maybe that'll help free up some extra money for you to help paying off your debt. Are all members of your household who can work chipping in to make things easier? So if you live in a multi-generational family, for instance, that might be helpful, because if everyone in the household is of age and they're working, or they have like a side project that makes them you know, a little bit more money, are they contributing any of that to monthly expenses? You know, the groceries, the rent, the other bills, your utilities. You know, and if they're willing, then have them share that with you, because you know we're all living together, so we should all be working together to help this debt that we're in. Do you have a talent where you could increase your income on the side, like crafting or possibly bookkeeping? I am a sewer crafter. One of the things I did during the pandemic was make masks. Most of them were given away, but some people used me for my mask, but a lot of them were gifts to people. I also did vending on the side and things of that nature. So if you have talent, if there's something that you can do to help generate some extra income, I suggest you go ahead and do that. It can't hurt. Check into whether or not you qualify for government benefits. You don't know unless you look. Can you get a part-time job? Like I said, you know, the 9 to 5 already might be just enough what we can handle, you know, mentally and emotionally, physically, but there are so many things online. You know, there's lots of online jobs you could do right now. A lot of people I know are English tutors online as a side job. A lot of teachers I know actually do that. And then they're selling what you do not need. This is something especially working from home, because I found very useful as my children have been outgrowing their, you know, toys and their all the baby gear you need, you know, the pack and play, the cribs, all that stuff. I've just been posting it on Facebook Marketplace and calling it a day. And that's the thing, a lot of people, you know, you have these different resources where you can start posting things. I sold my a extra large dog kennel, because I said, why is this just sitting here gaining dust, you know? And so, you know, look around, see what you can find, and look at that as a way to also make extra income on the side. And then take that income and put it towards your debt. So what goals do you have for building wealth? And this is our last question of the day. And our next segment of our webinar won't take very long. So some of us pretty much say yes, that's good. And a lot of us haven't really thought about it. Oh, let me share that poll with you guys. So 70% of us say yes, 10% say no, and then 20% say you haven't really thought about it. So for those that say yes, you're on the right track. And for those who haven't really thought about it or say no, this will help you get those it'll help you become more financially fit. It'll help you have a clearer idea of where you want to be financially if you have goals in mind, even if they're small goals and not long-term ones. So what does building wealth mean to you? You know, does it mean having extra money in the bank? Does it mean buying a new house? Does it mean having money set aside for unexpected expenses or retirement possibly? So, and you might be thinking, I don't have any wealth. What does this mean to me? Well, the way you build wealth is you take your assets and your liabilities, and that equals your net worth. So what you're going to do is your assets are anything an individual or a business owns that has commercial or exchange value. Your liabilities is money an individual organization owes, which is the same as your debt. And your net worth is the difference between the two. So you might be thinking, I don't have any net worth. How can I build wealth? But you probably do. I, for instance, have a car that I've paid off, and we kept it instead of trading it in. And that is part of my asset because I don't owe anything on it. And this is what a balance sheet might look like. And I think this is a really good thing. I've said before that I should just make one of these up so I can have them as a handout. But this is just kind of gives you an idea of your net worth and how it goes towards building wealth. And this will kind of give you, a goal. It'll give you a more positive mindset if you have something you go, oh, wait, I do have net worth of some kind. It may not be very much, but it's good to have a goal. And speaking of goals, credit and budget and building, goals are important. There are short-term, immediate, intermediate, and long-term financial goals. Short-term goals take less than a year, like a savings account, small household repairs, a weekend getaway. Intermediate goals are going to be 1 to 4 years, like a down payment on a vehicle, extended vacation, major home repairs. And then long-term goals are going to take 4 years or longer, a down payment on a house, buying a boat, or retirement. So budget plus goals equals wealth, or building wealth, I should say. So so does having good credit. Now, when it comes to these goals, you want to make them achievable, just like I talked about in the very beginning. So you want to write them down and make them visible. I have them listed by my door, so I see them every time I leave the room. You also want to write down how much it's going to cost you, not just the monetary cost, but you want to consider your support system and sacrifices that may be necessary. So if you're not a single person living alone, it's not only going to cost you money, it's going to cost the people around you time, money, attention, all of those things. You want to communicate your goal. You want to rank them in some kind of order and share them with your family members. Share them with your friends. Share them so that you're not alone as you're trying to do this. You want to establish a timeline. So you do this to determine the item in budget that you need to, add to or subtract from. For example, if your goal is to save $1,000 for a new car down payment over the next 18 months, you need to set aside $56 a month. So, and then you'll get that money. Also, think of that as like a savings account. Maybe you don't want to buy a new car over the next 18 months, but you'd like to have $1,000 in your pocket. Set aside $56 a month. Be flexible and keep your eye on the prize. You may have to reset and compromise. And this is where I go back to don't be too hard on yourself. Just like I mentioned in the beginning, this is not an overnight process. Building, establishing your credit, building and sticking to a budget, and building wealth. This is not something that just happens overnight, unless you did buy the winning Powerball for this coming drawing on Saturday night. This is not going to happen overnight. So, you're going to have some setbacks and you might be unsuccessful, but you just got to keep moving forward, and seeing your financial goals right in front of you will help you in that process. And now that we kind of have gotten to the end of things, and it is just 2 minutes before 11 o'clock, I hope I didn't take up too much of anyone's time today, and I hope you enjoyed the process. My name is Andre Johnson. Again, I'm the Financial Education Coordinator for the Office of Consumer Credit Commissioner. If you have a question today and I didn't get to it, you can email financial-education@occc.texas.gov.